Hello, my name is Tomas Lundblad and I live in Uppsala in Sweden. I want to describe my personal urgent emergency situation. My situation now is the same as for a man who has a house worth 30,000 crowns and it suddenly gets destroyed. I have been living for 18 months in a motorhome, an old motorhome from 1986, a Peugeot G5. But now the engine has collapsed. So I'm in a really urgent emergency situation because I have no other home and I have no friends or relatives to stay with. And what happened is this. I bought this motorhome for 35,000 crowns in December 2019. And after a few days, I was driving on a road near here, and the engine suddenly stopped. And I moved the motorhome into a nearby parking place. And it has been there since then for 18 months. In October last year, I tried to start the engine. It was difficult, but finally I succeeded. And I ran the engine for 40 minutes, but it suddenly stopped. And I went out to check the spark plugs. And I found that the spark plugs cables had melted. And I also found that a plastic drain plug in the bottom of the cooler had fallen down to the ground, and all the water in the cooler had run out. So the engine got overheated. And first I thought that I could mend this, but in April this year, I became a member of a motorhome forum on internet. The name is husbilsklubben.se. And I discussed this problem with the engine, and I talked with several persons who was very experienced about such engines. And they came to the conclusion that it was not possible to mend this engine. And the only solution was to change engine. And I investigated this on the second-hand market. And I found that a second-hand refurbished engine has the price 50,000 Swedish crowns. And it's also necessary to have a garage, and I don't have that. And I am not quite satisfied with this model either, because it has only one door in the middle. It's an integrated motorhome. So now I want to replace this motorhome because I can't stay any longer here on this parking place. Because I have been paying the fees here all the time, but the owner of the parking place don't want me to stay here, so I have a very short time to left here. And that's mean my situation is that this motorhome is not possible to use as a home. And I have no other homes, and I have no relatives or friends to stay with. So my problem now is that I need to have enough money to buy another motorhome which can replace this one. And I have to sell this one for a low amount of money, a cheap amount of money as a spare car, because it's not possible to move it or start it now. Or I can take it to a care scrap, but it costs at least 2,000 crowns. And I have personal belongings in this motorhome, which I want to rescue. And I want to prohibit that I have to start with living in a tent, because I have tried that before a short time, and I know it's a much worse situation. It can be much harder to get a home if one has begun in a tent. My only security in the question about housing in a home is a motorhome, because the authorities in this city, they have a certain amount of apartments to help people who are without a home, but they prefer to give those apartments to certain people, families and refugees and certain categories. It seems as it is more difficult for a person who is 40 years or older also to compete, because there are some people who get an apartment and some people don't. And I have spoken with several people who is in the same situation, and they know that they don't get an apartment from the authorities, even if they are without a home. And I tried once it is something like 10 years ago I tried, and I didn't get one then. Maybe there is a chance now that they have changed their mind and I can get an apartment. But I would say I can't trust on that at all. Probably they will say no, because so that means my only security in the question housing is a motorhome. So my plan is to buy a motorhome from 87 to 92, because they are tax-free. And the price is between 35,000 Swedish crowns and 50,000 Swedish crowns. I can mention also that the people on the motorhome forum, a Norman there, a man from Norway, he thought that this plastic drain plug was cracked when I bought it, and when I ran the engine, it fell down. So I think it can be so. So that means that when I bought this for 35,000 crowns, these problems already existed. Yes. I can mention a little bit about my background. And I grew up in a little village between Sundsvall and Timrå. And after school, I worked in a metal industry. But I wanted to do something else, and I started to study economics. And I proceeded in UPPSALA, and I finished the studies there. And after graduation, I worked for a few years with auditing in public administration. But I got on sick leave because of panic anxiety, and it was for a long time I was on sick leave. And during that time, something very special happened to me, because I became a born-again Christian. I became saved. And even if I wasn't a believer on God or Bible or Jesus Christ before, but I thought there was maybe something more than humans, maybe life on other planets. Anyway, for a couple of months I visited a little Christian home church, and once I agreed with 3 people there who was born again Christians, saved Christians, that they should pray for me to Jesus Christ and God the Father. And we was in a living room a Sunday, and I was silent, and they prayed for 15 minutes. And when they finished, I became tired, and I slept for 15 minutes. But when I awoke, I was very, very aware and very overwhelmed about that I realized that Jesus Christ in the New Testament is alive, and it's a true religion. I understand that the Bible, the God the Father and the Son Jesus Christ, is a true story in the New Testament, in the Bible. And the Bible is from God. It was like a discovery in science. I was very happy about that. I was overwhelmed all the times, and it followed me each day for several years. I was very happy about this. It was very important, a very precious gift I received from God, from Jesus Christ. A very overwhelming and strong feeling. It was every minute on the day, several years. And I became better from the panic anxiety. And for some years, but after some years I became worse again. And I got an apartment for 13 years. But I didn't get back to the labor market. Instead, I got early retired. During the time in the apartment, my prayer life was not as good as it had been before. I prayed in tongues before something like 3 years, but when I got this apartment, my prayer life was not good. I didn't pray almost not at all in the praying language in tongues. And I think that was the reason that I came into problems. There occurred problems in the house. And I made a report to a legal entity for tenants matters against the landlord. But this issue didn't become solved. So for some years it proceeded. And finally, the landlord wanted to evict me. And I became evicted. I was not a perfect tenant, but I was not so bad. And I can say, as a Christian, I can say honestly that what happens was that they created false disturbances. A few days before it should be a decision about this issue in the legal entity, they started to make hammering in an apartment next to me in the middle of the night. And they called to people who work with the disturbances to check up disturbances. And they came to my door and rang on my doorbell and said, we have heard that from people who have called us that you are banging in your apartment. But I said to them, absolutely not. But they insisted, and they took a paper and wrote my name and reported me and insisted that I had done it. But I can assure you, this was a fake disturbances. They wanted to get this eviction through the legal entity, and they was in need of doing something because I haven't done such disturbances, which was needed to get it through the legal entity. So that was happened me. But I forgive each one who was involved in this. I hope they are coming to heaven and also can be a part of the rapture, to be a part of the bride of Christ when it happens. And after that, I lived in second-hand apartments and rooms for 7 years. But then it became difficult to get such housing because of students and there was a competition between groups. But so I started to live in motorhomes, and I bought a Ford Transit cheap motorhome for 15,000 crowns. It was the first one, and after that I bought the Volkswagen LT van, also a motorhome, also for 15,000 crowns. And this one I have now was the price 35,000 crowns. But what happens to me with this motorhome, it is useless now and I can't get money to sell it either, just maybe 1,000 crowns or something like that. So what happens to me, I lost everything I owned in my security because this was my only home and I am not a rich man. So what happens to me through this accident, it was very bad, a shock for me really. And I am receiving money each month as a pension because I'm a pensioner. But it's not so much money, and it takes time to save money enough to buy another motorhome who can replace this one. And now I am under pressure from the owner of the parking place. So I have to solve these problems. And so I'm in a very, very urgent emergency situation now. So I want to buy another motorhome which can replace this one. And that's why I'm doing this fundraiser. And I'm very grateful for help I can get. Yes, I can also show how it looks, this motorhome. I will go out. Yes, here is the motorhome. It looks good, but it's old. It is from 1986. It's a Peugeot G5 petrol. It's an integrated motorhome because and there is only one door in the middle there. And it's elegant and many windows, but it's not worth much now. Maybe just only 1,000 crowns because the engine has collapsed, unfortunately. But I am very grateful that it has worked as a home for 18 months during 2 winters. So my situation is that I rely on a motorhome and not on the authorities because they have failed before and there is no security for a certain person, for certain groups of the population to get an apartment from the authorities. So I have to rescue my situation. So this is how it looks. This motorhome. I will go and show the registration number, plate. Yes. Here is the registration plate. It is GDX014.